6:30, so can I get approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Is there any public participation? No? Okay. Then we will move on to our budget hearing presentation, and I'll invite Linda up to do that.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to take a look at the 24-25 projected budget for the school district. This is the agenda for this evening. We are going to take a look at the budget overview, local revenue and property taxes, the 2024 summer tax levy, the revenue and expenditure assumptions and projections. Then we're going to take a look at some charts and some historical data. And then finally, we'll take a look at our self-insured health insurance data year-to-date. Regarding the budget overview, the district has multiple funds, the general fund being the largest fund, and as a requirement of GASB number 54 from years ago, the athletic expenditures and revenue must be included in the general fund. Other funds that the district has, we have state and federal funds, special services fund, which is our cafeteria or food service fund. We have a debt fund, building and site fund, which includes our capital projects. And then most recently, these special revenues funds, which encompass our scholarship funds as well as our student activity funds. Back in 2020, 2021, GASB 84 was established, and that established criteria for identifying the fiduciary activities in these funds. We'll take a look at our local property taxes. We have non-homestead property tax. That is tax collected from non-homestead properties that is assessed at 18 mills, and it's used for our general fund purposes. The millage was renewed back in August of 2020 and continues through August of 2030. The non-homestead property includes your business or commercial, vacation properties, vacant land, rental properties, but it does not include your personal residence. We also have non-hold or hold harmless in our school district. That is property that includes all homestead properties, and the millage was again voted or renewed back in August of 2020 and continues through August of 2030. That tax is based on our student count. And the district, as a student, or an amount per student, used to be $585.63 per student. But back in July of 2021, the state reduced that down to $305 per student. So there was a reduction in what we get per student. Continuing on with the local property taxes, we have the state education tax. That again is paid by all taxpayers at an amount of 6 mills that is assessed. Taxes are assessed and collected by the township. They're sent to Lansing and then redistributed by district based on their student or the state aid foundation allowance as well as our student count. We have a sinking fund. The voters approved a renewal of a 1.0 mil sinking fund levy back in March of 2020. That continues for 5 years, which it will end in December of 2024. And the sinking fund is set aside for repairs, renovations, and replacements of the district property and equipment. And lastly, we have the bond debt fund. The school district has 3 debt funds that we combine as one debt retirement fund. We have a 2015 refunding bond amount at 1.04 mils, a 2016 bond that is assessed at 2.02 mils, a 2023 bond that was passed in November of 2022, which is our most current bond, that is being levied at 2.53 mils for a total debt millage of 5.59 mils. Just as a note, school districts can refund their bonds to help save the taxpayers money. And that's what, back in 2015, the district refunded the 1995 bond. So, and we continually watch that, and monitor that, and see, if it's going to be helpful to refund any of our bonds to help save the taxpayers' money. So based on that, our July 2024 levy, or our summer tax levy, the district levies in the summer and in the winter. For the summer levy, we will have the state tax levy. That is only assessed at one time, and that's only assessed in the summer. So that levy is being assessed at 100% in this July levy at 6 mills. Then we have the local mill, which includes the operating hold harmless. Again, this is being assessed at the summer and the winter, so this is at a 50% levy at 0.3237 mills. Then we have the operating non-homestead at 8.6763 mills. Those two combined equal the total operating millage of 9 mills in the summer, and there will be 9 mills in the winters for a total of 18 mills for the entire year. The bond debt fund, as mentioned, at 2.795 mills, that's on all property, and again, just the summer portion at 50%. And then the sinking fund on all property at 50% at 0.4862. Those will be approved, that will be approved later on this evening to assess those for the summer levy. Moving on to key assumptions for the 24-25 school year, and I'm going to go over the revenue key assumptions. For our state aid, the projections basically start with our student count, and we get some information from third-party resources, and where we obtain our information is we take those third-party resources as well as take some internal data, and we project on what we believe the student count is going to be for next year. Next year, we are projecting, based on some internal information and the third-party resources, that our student count is going to be 1,495. That's a reduction of approximately 71 students based on our current count. That is a reduction of approximately $700,000 in revenue. As of June 18th, and as of today, actually, the state has not approved a budget yet. So we are projecting a lot of our projections are based on what we hear from the governor, what we hear from the Senate, and what we hear from the House. So these projections that we're making, or assumptions that we're making, are based on, what we're hearing coming out of Lansing. So having said that, the state of Michigan or through the governor's office, the state aid foundation allowance is projected to go up $241. So we use that as the projection for next year, which would increase our foundation allowance to $10,154. As mentioned, the loss of 71 students is approximate loss of $700,000 in revenue. And then other categorical revenues, we can talk about the MIPSR's UAAL, which is the unfunded liability portion of the retirement. That rate was projected to decrease from 16.89, which it is currently at, to 10.54%. We did not do that as a district, and the reason why we did not do that, we kept that rate consistent to the rate that is being assessed in 23-24 due to some maintenance of effort issues regarding special ed funding. And what happens is the district will receive special ed funding the following year based on the previous year's special ed costs. So if we're going to reduce our MIPSR's rate, we could run into some issues next year in reporting our special ed costs and receiving the revenue. So we're going to keep it consistent until we know furthermore, what the state plans on doing with that rate. Section 31A, which is at-risk monies, those are budgeted based on the governor's projected amount of $218,000. Section 31AA, which is the mental health categorical, that amount was budgeted based on our carryover from 23-24, plus the amount that the governor is estimating our district will receive, for a total amount of $310,887. We also receive isolated school district categorical monies. We are budgeting that at $538,000, and that's based on the governor's budget. That's roughly about a 7.5% increase from what we're currently at. And then other state aid categoricals, we're basing those on our current year 23-24 final budget amounts. We also have the Wayne Risa Enhancement Millage. That is a renewal millage that was passed by the voters back in November of 2020. It is 2 mills that will be levied for 6 years, continuing through the fall of 2028. And for 24-25, we are projecting an amount of $350 per student for a revenue projection of $523,250. And that money, that enhancement millage amount has decreased because the number of students that we are projecting has decreased. So again, getting back to the taxes, we have the homestead and the hold harmless tax calculation. Those are hold harmless is based on our student count. So again, that's going down because our student count is going down. And then our local taxes were estimated based on a taxable value increase of approximately 6%. Regarding our federal and our ISD, or our intermediate school district, which is Wayne Risa, those grants, the title grants are estimated based on the projections that we were given as well as potential carryovers. So for Title I, we are projecting $44,220. That's a significant decrease in the last 2 years of our Title I funding. Title II, roughly $30,437. Title III, $865. Title IV, $16,288. IDEA, which is our special ed revenue, estimated at $493,703. The next few grants are basically grants that were applied through Audrey as our curriculum director. So Section 23G, that's the Michigan Kids Back on Track grant. We are estimating our school district to receive $191,372. The Section 31N6, which is the mental health and support services, we are estimating the district to receive $96,200. On this grant, typically we get the federal revenue, and then we have the expenditure matching that revenue. With this grant, though, the district is responsible to pay 20% of the cost. So when I look at the expenditures on this side, we will be paying 20% more than the actual grant that we're receiving. The coach or COSA grants, we have literacy coach estimated at $125,000, as well as the math coach estimated at $125,000. And then other assumptions regarding revenue, investment income, we're decreasing that due to the assumed decrease in interest rates. We will have a reduction in Perkins revenue as our voc ed or our CTE paraprofessional position was eliminated. We projected a reduction in Wayne Risa special ed revenue based on a special one-time funding that we received in 23-24 of approximately $60,000. Athletic revenue is projected at $215,750, and then all other revenue is budgeted based on our 23-24 final amended budget amounts. So using all those assumptions, we will be looking at the last column, which is the original budget that's projected for 24-25. And using those assumptions, we will have local sources of taxes and other of $2,010,395. Athletics, as mentioned, $215,750 for a total local revenue of $2,226,145. Intermediate sources, which is the enhancement millage, $523,250. And then the state sources, which is our state aid, $17,977,055. Federal sources, $596,513. And then incoming transfers, which is our special ed and voc ed consortium revenue, $1,237,400 for a total revenue projected for next year, $22,560,363. Now we'll take a look at the key assumptions for our expenditures for next year. We'll take a look at salaries and benefits. The salaries and benefits expenditures are projected based on our current contractual obligations, which include the freezing of steps and staff reductions. Insurance benefits regarding our health insurance, we contract with a third-party contractor, and our projections are based on those current enrollment projections, as well as the amount per contract that we receive from our third-party administrator. We also have cash in lieu, which is the opt-out for those that do not choose our insurance. That was kept consistent with our current enrollment information. Dental, vision, disability, life, and workers' comp insurance premiums are all based consistent with the current information provided by our third-party administrators. When we look at our retirement blended rate, again, I'm going to refer back to the UAAL and keeping that consistent. We get the revenue from the state, and then we also pay that out. So when I kept the revenue consistent at 16.89, the expenditure is going to be also consistent at 16.89. And again, that's to help alleviate some of the maintenance of effort issues with the special ed costing. Recently, MIPSRS has been a huge headline in the state aid budget that's going forward. We are hearing as a district that it could be anywhere from 0% to 7% reduction in the retirement rate. For the district, we projected it to be about a 3% reduction in our retirement rate. So when we did the projections for retirement, instead of it going to 31.36, we said it was going to be 27.36 with that reduction of that 3%. Again, we don't know what that's going to be. The talk is it could be, as I said, as high as 7% or as low as no reduction. So when talking about our total retirement percentage, we're looking at the 31.36, which is the MIPSRS rate, plus the 16.89, which is the UAAL rate, less the 3% for a total amount of retirement percentage at 45.25% of every dollar. Click too many times. Okay, supplies and materials, our curriculum budget, we're setting that at $125,000. We're back to that amount that the Board of Ed recommends, and they've been recommending that amount for several years. As far as I've been here, that's the recommended amount. We did reduce the building budgets by approximately 10%. And athletic expenditures are projected at $752,825, a huge increase in the official fees, upwards from approximately 50 to 75% increase, depending on the sport. Purchase services, our utilities expenditures are increased by 5.5% based on our current usage and price increases. The property and casualty liability insurance costs for next year are estimated at approximately a 10% increase. And legal fees expenditures were budgeted at $120,000 due to anticipated negotiations as there are multiple contracts that have expired this year. Federal grants, as mentioned, federal grants expenditures must match the federal grant awards except for that one that we do have to at least pay the 20% of that grant. So looking at those assumptions, we're going to again look at that last column, which is the original budget for 24-25. When we look at the basic instruction, elementary, middle school, high school, summer school, and camp kindergarten, that total is $9,680,087. Added needs or special ed, that cost is $2,867,910 for a total basic instruction cost of $12,547,997. When we look at our support services, the pupil services, that is projected at $2,351,680. Instructional services, $874,413. General administration expenses, $730,485. Then we look at school administration expenditures projected at $1,523,445. Business services, $442,255. Operations and maintenance, that budget is $2,374,130. Transportation, $1,096,655. Central services, $781,100. Other support at $7,000, and then athletics, $752,825. We do have some indirect costs for our special ed funds, and that's estimated at $9,500 for a total expenditure, including those indirect costs, of $23,491,485. I'm going to take a look here at what our projected fund balance will be at the end of this current year. We are looking at a total revenue, final amended budget amount of $25,033,445. And then total expenditures, including any indirect costs or transfers, $25,682,444, for an excess of expenditure over revenue by $646,799. That will bring our June 30th of 2024 fund balance to a projected amount of $3,492,426. I do want to indicate that we had set aside, the district had set aside $218,000 for health insurance funds, and we did end up using those during this fiscal year. So when we look at that fund balance as a percentage of expenditures, we're looking at 13.21%. And then as a percentage of revenue, 13.55. So that is what we are projecting to end 23-24 on, which is in a few days. When you take a look at our revenue for 23-24 as a pie chart, again, the largest piece of our revenue sources is the state aid at 19 for 23-24, $19,131,197, and then we have federal revenue, transfers in, athletics, local, and then the enhancement millage. Then we take a look at the expenditure breakdown. The biggest piece of our expenditures was salaries and benefits, and roughly about 78 to 79%. So this is a year that they have been reduced. It usually is between 80 to 83%, and a big piece of that is the ESSER funding. We're using money for ESSER funding for other sources, such as computers and other things of maintenance in that effort. So the percentage is going to go down for your salaries and benefits because those other categories will go up.
Isn't another reason because transportation went from salaries and benefits into purchase services?
Yes. So I was getting there. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. That's good because when you take a look at our purchase services, they're at 11%, and that part of that reason is we did go outsourcing our transportation piece, and we removed all of those salaries out of the salaries and benefits. Yeah, we were at 86. Yeah. Yeah. You're going to be at 80%, 80, 81% with the transportation back in there. So having said that, our purchase services percentage is higher than what it's been in the past. So now we're going to take a look at what our fund balance will be at the end of next year. So based on all those projections that I talked about with the revenue and the expenditures, our total revenue is projected to be $22,560,363. And then the total expenditures, including the indirect costs are transferred in, $23,491,485, leaving an excess of expenditure over revenue again of $931,122. Which will bring our June 30th of 2025 projected fund balance down to $2,561,304. And again, we did in this budget, project, at least try to get that reserve back up. So we are projecting that reserve to be $100,000 for 24, 25. And again, I just want to remind that we did use our reserve that we had set aside last fiscal year of $218,000 during this fiscal year due to the healthcare rising expenditures. So having said that, the unrestricted fund balance as a percentage of expenditures at the end of next year is projected to be 10.48%. And then as a percentage of revenue, the expected fund balance is going to be 10.91%. And then we'll take a look at these again, the revenues as a pie chart. Again, the biggest piece of the pie is the state aid sources at 17 million, almost 18 million. And then we have federal revenue, transfers in, athletics, local, and enhancement millage. And same thing here with the expenditures. The biggest piece of the pie are salaries and benefits. And the purchase services, again, it's consistent now at around 11%. Okay, now the next few slides are going to be some historical data. This is our fund balance trends from 2006 to 2025. And you can kind of see it's all over the map. And I can just say that that is most likely due to our health insurance and how our health insurance has been, you know, just because we're self-insured, that's a very hard expenditure to predict. We did go into deficit. We were a deficit district back in 2016, and thankfully in 2017 we immediately got out of that deficit, and a big piece of that was the enhancement millage passage. And then as mentioned, we will be projected our fund balance at the end of 2025 at roughly $2.6 million. This is just a revenue and expenditure chart to compare what our revenues and expenditures are for the last several years, last 10 years. And you can see the last 3 years, our expenses have been greater than our revenue. The state aid per student foundation allowance, again, this is just a historical data. Back in 2013, 2014, we were at $8,354. We are projecting our fund balance, or I'm sorry, our state aid foundation allowance to be $10,154. The last several years, the state has had significant increases in the foundation allowance. Not enough to keep up with inflation, but been pretty significant in the amounts. This is our student population trend from 2010 to 2010-11 through 24-25. And we are, as mentioned, we are projecting our enrollment to be 1,495. At our highest peak in 2016-2017, we are at 1,908. That from 2016 till now is a reduction of about 430 plus students, which is significant. And then this is the retirement cost. And again, I'm kind of showing you what the retirement cost is in the green. And then in the blue is the UAAL portion of that, which the state funds us that, and then we have to send that back. And then that line, the yellow line, is the combined amount. And as you can see, it consistently has gone up, except for this year with the talk, we are projecting that to go down by 3%. So a total retirement percentage rate of 45.25%. And the last couple of slides are going over our self-insured health insurance amounts. This first slide is July through December. And if you can look at the variance, this line, the favorable or unfavorable, from July through December, we had unfavorable months each of those months. And then this last slide is just from January through May. We still have June's claims to report, but again, year-to-date number, we are unfavorable by almost $267,000, hence the usage of that reserve of $218,000 that we had. And again, we still have a month to go. And the year-to-date number is roughly 2.2 million through 11 months. And when you look at the bottom, the last several years, the highest that we've been is 2.1 million. So we've already surpassed that. We still have a month left of claims. So this was a very large year in our healthcare claims. Are there any questions?
No, really well done, Linda. I know there's a ton of
Thank you.
that goes into it and
Thank
lots
you.
of time and effort, so thank you.
Okay. Good.
Sorry, thank you, Linda. I'm officially going to adjourn our budget hearing, and we will move into the regular meeting. Just give me one moment. Okay, so I would like to call the meeting to order. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get an approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. We will move on to public participation. Do we have any public participation this evening? Okay. We will get started with presentations, and first up, we have some service awards. I will turn it over to Carla for that.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I want to welcome back a few other people to celebrate their years of service that they've given to Groseal Township Schools. First, we have Natalie Bosman, who works at Park Lane, and she's a parapro for us. She's celebrating 10 years of service with us. She could not make it here this evening. We still wanted to celebrate her. We also have here with us today Patty Duffett. Patty is celebrating 25 years with Groseal Township School. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate you, Patty. And we also have Tim Rogers, who I was hoping was going to make it tonight, but I don't think he is. But he's in our maintenance department, and he also is celebrating 25 years of service with us. So I know how much Mike appreciates him. I know everybody, whether they realize it or not, Tim has a hand in helping out around the school district, that's for sure. So I want to celebrate him as well. So thank you very much. And thank you, guys.
That's awesome. You're still smiling, Patty. I like it.
Thank you, Carla, and thank you, everyone, for your service. We will move on to the sinking fund renewal, and I'm going to turn it over to Audrey for that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Linda and I are going to speak to you this evening about our sinking fund renewal that will be on the ballot in August of this year, 2024. We have a small presentation to give to you this evening along with our community at home. So you can all see what has been done with our sinking fund dollars in the past. Look to see what we are trying to do in the future, and then also explain a little bit about different funding sources in the district. I know there is a lot of talk between sinking fund, bond funds, general funds, a lot of work going on at Park Lane and at the high school, and we just want to be clear about what we are looking to do moving forward. So Linda is going to be our navigator of slides tonight, and we're just going to kind of work together, but she's going to stand at the podium. So Linda will take care of the next slide. Thank you,
We
Linda.
want to thank the community. We've whenever the school needs something, whenever there's a millage or a bond, that's proposal, it typically passed, and we just want to thank you for the support on that. the district is going to go out for a building and site sinking fund millage renewal that is set for the August 6th of 2024 ballot. And what that means is we are going for a renewal of what we currently are assessing for the sinking fund. The sinking fund millage is about updating instructional technology, improving the student learning environment, updating school facilities, interiors and exteriors, and enhancing student safety and security. The Building and Site Sinking Fund renewal proposal will continue to provide the revenue that the district needs to keep the infrastructure, repairs, any renovations, any, repairs, renovations, and replacements. So if we have, a boiler go down, the sinking fund as an emergency fund, we use our sinking fund dollars for that. The proposal is a 5-year, 0.9781 mil, and this is a renewal, as mentioned. And that, again, will allow the district to continue to levy that sinking fund millage. There's no increase in this millage rate, and the current sinking fund millage will expire in December of 2024. The school district has had a sinking fund since 2006. It went up, they're typically 5 years. It went up for renewal in 2010, and then 2015, and then again in 2020. In previous years, the sinking fund revenue was, again, as we mentioned, used for facility repairs, renovations, and replacements. And within the last 5 years, the district was able to use those funds for technology enhancements within the district, such as infrastructure and computers. This kind of gives you an idea of what the last 5 years the district used the sinking fund for. The projects included roof repairs, the improvements of our HVAC systems, replacement and repairs of our chiller systems, electronic gate and fencing at the transportation department, LED lighting throughout the district, vape detectors, security cameras throughout the district, repair of the baseball and softball sheds. We rebuilt the middle school art room. We had purchased uninterrupted power supply units, core edge switches, lighting for the high school auditorium, replacement of middle school boiler, and then most recently, the repair of our masonry wall at Park Lane Elementary. This kind of gives, for the last few sinking fund, what our general fund expenditures and revenues were in comparison. So the first set is for the actual from 2013 to 2016. Our expenditures exceeded our revenues. If we did not have our sinking fund, the expenditures would have significantly been more than our revenues. But because the sinking fund, we can use that as a what I consider a savings fund or a savings account for any immediate, emergency repairs.
As you would have noticed from that list that Linda showed a few slides back, some of those things we just couldn't live without. So without that sinking fund in place as that emergency fund or savings account, as you will, that would have come right out of our general fund.
Right. So 2017 through 2020, our revenues exceeded our expenditures. And again, if we didn't have the sinking fund, we probably would have been the expenditures even higher than what they were. And then the last group is 2021 through 2024, same thing. So when we talk about the three different funds that Audrey was mentioning, sinking fund, again, I look at the sinking fund as a savings account so that, we collect the taxes and we use that in emergencies. Are there projects that we plan for? Yes. But there's also, we save some of that for anything any emergency, for let's say a boiler goes out. We have that safety net of the sinking fund to make those repairs, not using our general fund dollars. So as mentioned, the sinking fund, it's for future repairs and renovations, replacement of capital expenditures, also funding for necessary maintenance and repairs of the existing school facilities and equipment. And then most recently, as mentioned, we are able to use sinking fund dollars for technology. When you compare the sinking fund to the bond fund, I equate that to like a mortgage. We go out and we as a district, we go for a bond, we get the bond, and then we have to pay those bonds back. So it's kind of like a mortgage. And we use those funds to improve the school district facilities. So they are used to do specific capital projects, and they have to be specific because they go to the state, and we have to get those, we have a pre-qualifying application, we have to get that approved by the state. So these are specific projects that we go out for. They fund the major renovations and of the school facilities, and they also keep up with, technology as well. So it does support the technology piece as well as transportation buses and things like that. When you look at our general fund, that is our general operating expenditure. So that would include our day-to-day operations. It would include our salaries and benefits. It includes our curriculum costs, our maintenance and utilities, the normal day-to-day costs of transportation, and other curricular activities such as athletics. As we mentioned, this is going out on the August 6th ballot, and you can vote at your regular polling place or by absentee ballot now through the election day. And for more information, you can go to our website. There is a pop-up that will guide you to where to click on any information that we currently have. This will be up there. This presentation will also be up there. Or you may reach out to Audrey Kalis, who is the interim superintendent, by either calling or emailing her.
I just want to reiterate that Linda and I will be around the community to speak about this moving forward with many, for those of you watching at home, for many of your community groups. So please help welcome us to your groups to explain anything or ask any questions that you might have on the sinking fund. Again, I do want to thank the community for their continued support, not only through our sinking fund year after year, but hopefully with this renewal as well, but with our bond projects and all the other community support that we've always received from the district.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? Great. Thank you, both of you, and yes, thank you. And thank you again to the community for your support. All right, we're going to move on to information and discussion. And under here we have an update on negotiations. I'm going to invite John Cava up.
Good evening, everyone. Provide a brief update tonight regarding negotiations, specifically negotiations with the Rosedale Education Association.
John, can you turn your light on?
Sorry, excuse me. Again, my name is John Cava, and I've been working with the board as the lead negotiator, mainly with the Rosedale Education Association. I am providing an update to the board this evening just on the status of negotiations and able to answer any questions the board may have as well. And pertinent time as you are obviously reviewing your budget. You had your budget hearing for the 24-25 budget, and you will presumably approve both the 23-24 amended budget and the 24-25 budget here this evening. So I was asked to just provide an update before you actually do those this evening and kind of where we're at in negotiations. So just for brief background, we are currently negotiating in year 4 of one-year contracts. So going back to the 21-22 school year, we've negotiated several one-year contracts with the Education Association, each year providing specific increases on salary, among other things, for the teachers, and obviously in exchange for things that we've negotiated at arm's length. However, that has resulted in, when you look at expenditures and your budget hearing this evening, obviously, salaries are a large part of those expenditures. The teachers are your largest group, and therefore have the largest percentage of those salaries. So just want to provide a perspective on what we're talking about, because, you know, when we saw your audited fund balance at the end of last year, so end of fiscal year 2023, it was the first year in some time that you had a actual structural deficit, an audited deficit, meaning your expenditures exceeded your revenues in the fiscal year 2023. And so Linda had a historical chart that was listed in her budget hearing document, or presentation, excuse me, that showed that your budget, since you were in deficit in 2016, you came out of that in 2017, and you actually grew to over $4 million pretty quickly. And so you had increases, which is great. But obviously, you've also experienced decline in student enrollment, and obviously, as you have decline in student enrollment, we can't just automatically eliminate staff members, because we still have, even through attrition, you still are going to need staff members, because you don't just have a perfect amount of students leaving in certain areas where you just suddenly don't need an extra science class or an extra English class. So you're going to continually have, when you have declining enrollment in any school district in the state of Michigan, you have a period of time where your expenditures need to catch up to that declining enrollment. But we've had the situation where we've had decreased student enrollment, and also increased salaries over the last 3 years. Which puts us to where we started negotiations this year. Beginning of April, end of March, started talking about negotiations with the board itself. Obviously, you've had budget amendments that have come before you throughout the school year, both at the finance committee level and at the board level itself. And you've seen that you had your, again, structural deficit at the end of fiscal year 2023. You're projecting a structural deficit again for fiscal year 2024 of a little over $600,000. So again, dipping it back into that fund balance. This year, we also, when you look at your monthly insurance reports, not sure where that's going to come out as well, but that's always a key factor in how much will you potentially spend on insurance at the end of your fiscal year, which could change that number to be sometimes worse, sometimes better than what you're budgeting. But right now, you're budgeting that structural deficit. You're then budgeting a structural deficit into next year, and that structural deficit into next year includes, as of right now, a freeze in your salaries, and with that includes a reduction of students, as was stated in the budget presentation, but also is including a potential increase in the per pupil amount, which is actually being negotiated in Lansing probably as we speak here right now, and what's going to happen here before the end of the session this week. So all that to be said is we're continuing to look at these structural deficits. We started looking as a bargaining team, and then coming to the board with what are ways we can look at reductions. And reductions and not hitting the classroom directly. So your budget includes a host of reductions that again were presented during the budget that don't directly hit the classroom. But with that being said, we also did have to look at ways in which we could potentially look for savings in the negotiation process. And so one of the things that was explored early on, and the Education Association bargaining team was supportive of, was looking at ways in which we could restructure your self-funded insurance plan such that the district could achieve cost savings, and there would be cost savings actually to individual employees on a per paycheck basis, because the amount that would come out of their paychecks would be less than if we stayed on the plan that's currently in place. So there's a lot of discussion around that, and actually on April 30th, we started bargaining at 8 in the morning, and the bargaining teams were here till 1 in the morning, so literally a full, almost 20-hour day, hashing out ways and looking at a $400,000 savings to the district. It would have provided individual savings to teachers themselves, and at least on a per paycheck basis, and also guaranteed step increases for individuals who are eligible for salary steps, which you have a 12-step schedule. Those steps are worth approximately 5% of an increase each year. Because the $400,000 savings would have allowed us to pay steps to individuals that were on steps. And then because we had a hard stop on when we could change insurance in May, we also discussed having the possibility to continue to look at salary percentage increases at a later date once we had a better idea of where our budget was. So that agreement was tentatively agreed to by the bargaining teams. That was the financial piece. There are also some language proposals that were hashed out over that 20-hour period because there are a lot of topics that are now mandatory topics of bargaining that were not mandatory topics of bargaining for the last 12 years, including teacher evaluations, teacher discipline, teacher layoff and recall, and teacher placement. So we had a meeting of minds on all of those topics. Unfortunately, ultimately, that tentative agreement was taken to the membership of the Education Association, and it failed, so it ultimately never came to the board for review and approval because the Education Association did not approve that. So as a result of not having that approval, we were not able to recognize that $400,000 health insurance savings that we had bargained with the bargaining team. So therefore, that's not reflected in what you had in your budget presentation this evening. Conversely, also though, because we didn't recognize that $400,000 savings, your budget also does not have salary step increases, as was discussed in the budget presentation, because we don't have the savings to pay for those at this time. And again, I mentioned that those are worth approximately 5% each year. So as you as a board have had declining enrollment, I just give a little historical perspective because that's where we sit today with bargaining, that we don't have a tentative agreement. We're going to have to continue to bargain with the Education Association and bargaining based on the budget that you're going to be passing this evening. But we need to keep in context where we've come on a historical perspective, and we keep discussing this at the table as well. So as I said, each step is worth approximately 5%. So going back to 21-22, this board ultimately negotiated steps and a 1% increase across the board for teachers. So for someone on steps, that was approximately a 6% increase. In the 22-23 contract, we negotiated steps and a 3% increase across the board. So again, for someone on steps, that was approximately an 8% increase that year. And then in this past year, 23-24, there was a negotiation of steps and a 5% increase for anyone at the top of the scale, and a 2.5% increase for everyone else on steps. So again, with a 2.5% increase for those steps, that would be approximately 7.5% total with the 5% in the salary increases. So just to put it again in perspective, over the 3 years, we're talking a little over compounding almost 23% increase for individuals that were on steps. Dollar amounts, what does that mean? So someone coming in back in the 21-22 school year, if they were making at the MA level on the lower end of the schedule for $48,500, this year they made $59,687. So that's an increase of just over $11,000, which is approximately a 23% increase over those 3 years. Someone who was in the middle of the scale at step 7 was making approximately $68,300 that 21-22 school year. They would be making $84,060 this year. Again, approximately a 23% increase, and for those individuals, nearly $12,000. Someone at the top of the scale, and if they didn't have any steps, they were already stepped out because they had been here for 15 or more years, for example. They would have been making $91,700 in 21-22. They'd now be at $100,543 at our MA plus 30 scale. So our MA plus 30 scale goes up to over $100,000 based on this most recent year's negotiated increase of a 5% at the top. So that's a 9% increase for someone who was at the top over those 3 years. So in this board, while you've had declining enrollment every year, you've gone into an actual structural deficit last year, you continue to have one this year, you provided extremely healthy raises. And when I say you provided, they were negotiated at arm's length with the union, and the union was a give and take, no question about it. And we were able to achieve various operational savings. And when I say operational savings, not necessarily cost savings, but the ability for administration to implement the programs that you as a board continue to make sure are at the forefront of the education you're offering here in Grosse Ile. And so we've continued to make sure we have provided administration, the ability to provide those services, and you're providing very fair wages, and you've done that at an exponential pace over the last 3 years. Obviously, we want to continue to do that as much as possible, but because of where you're at with your budget and going now to, you're at looking at 10% at the end of next year, which we've all talked about that. That's below where our auditors recommend we should be. Their auditors are talking about we should always be at that 15 to 20% range. Obviously, once we get below 10%, and if we get to 5%, then the state potentially comes in and starts reviewing our books. So as a bargaining team moving forward, we are going to be taking the steps here to make sure that we implement the budget that you're going to be reviewing and potentially passing this evening. Obviously, you will continue to monitor what the state is doing with its budget and can update your budget accordingly. But we're gonna continue to make sure that you're fiscally sound and able to offer the programs that you have here. So we're gonna get dates with the EA and keep bargaining over the summer and bargain in compliance with the budget you're passing. So happy to take any questions. I know it's kind of a little bit all over the place with the historical perspective, but wanted to make sure you had an idea of what those numbers actually mean when we start talking about percentages.
Thank you, John. Do folks have questions?
So the healthcare option that they had is a closed window. Is that what I heard you say?
Closed window for this year. I mean, we can always look at negotiating the savings again next year. Will it be a $400,000 savings next year? It's hard to say because obviously it'll be based on claims that come in for this current year. As part of the process, even though we were not able to negotiate moving everyone onto a new plan that would have offered same benefits with a potential reduction in the per pupil or the amount that was coming out in a per paycheck amount for individuals. We still offer that plan, so individuals could select to move over to that plan. So it's out there now. So hopefully we'll be able to start seeing some savings over the next few years with that offering. Again, all it does is provide another avenue for your employees to select an option, and if we can provide more options in healthcare without any increase to our pocketbook, and even if it is an increase to our pocketbook, what are we balancing that with? But we didn't have to do that, and so we have more options for your employees now.
Thank you. Other questions?
So if you say a structural deficit, that means that's just that amount that we're going into the next year, what we're not able to save, I guess, or have to spend somewhere else, right?
Correct.
Tell me more about what that really means.
Yeah, so your 23-24 amended budget that's before you tonight
Right.
has just a little over, I believe, $600,000 in expenditures exceeding your revenues. So if you have a checkbook at home and you brought in $1 million, you spent $1.6 million. So you're $600,000 over what you can spend. I guess that's a checkbook at home and $1 million. So 100,000 100. But so expenditures have exceeded your revenues. That doesn't mean you're technically in an overall deficit because you still have a fund balance of approximately $3.4 million.
We're taking it from the fund balance then to
Exactly.
do that, right?
Exactly.
And then that rolls forward another year, and therefore if it's done again, it's not only the $600,000 from this past year, that's compounded with
Correct.
the year after. Is that
Yeah.
right? I'm not trying
Well,
to get my head.
That's exactly right. So when I'm giving this historical perspective, back in 21, 22, you were coming off of an audited fund balance of a little over 22%. So now you're talking about looking at an audited fund balance at the end of this year of 13%, and by next year, a little over 10%. I mean, so in the process of 4 years, you've decreased nearly 10%, and you've only been in a structural deficit technically for 2 years. So that's how the compounding effect happens very quickly. So next year would be the third year. So in 3 years, you've essentially potentially eliminated almost 11% of your fund equity, and you're only going to have 10% left. So if you keep going in the same manner in 3 more years, you're in deficit.
Got it.
I think I understand it, but let me phrase Dan's question a little way. So when we have these costs that we've agreed to for our collective bargaining units, that becomes a fixed cost. So it's, as your term you use, it compounds or doubles down on that. So as we lose whatever, so every step costs us approximately, what, $250,000?
Right.
So every step we give, not only does it have that same cost structure in place, as we go another year with another step, it puts us $250 to the worst.
Correct.
So in other words, I always view this as we're trying to turn an aircraft carrier when it comes to expenses. Once we've agreed to an expense, it's hard to scale back and do it without, there's only two ways to cut payroll costs. It's either per capita or wages, and neither one of them, so we can't pull back too quickly on that. So it just keeps on rolling.
Correct. Yeah, so in the examples I gave, so that first year, 21, 22, it was an increased cost of $325,000. The following year, it was 440, but the 325 carried forward. So now you're
Now you're 725,000.
correct. Well, yep, and then the following year was another 580. So now you're at 1.3. So if you started off at 20 million in 21, 22, now your costs are 21.3 over those 3 years of the contract.
I like the way you explained with the bank account because we talk about percentages a lot and the fund balance being, 16 out of 13 out of 10. But when you look at the numbers from 2022 to 2025, we've essentially dipped into our quote unquote savings account by over $2.3 million. We've gone from 4.8 to 2.5, and I think that's very much a much more simple way of putting it or to understand it. I think is the percents are one thing, but when you say, hey, we've dug into our piggy bank by $2.3 million, that's a big hit.
Absolutely.
It's unsustainable, unfortunately. I mean, some of us remember, once you're below how do I put it? Once we were below 5%, it was a death spiral into a deficit and nothing flat, and then.
And we're on that trajectory right now.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Once you get to that, once you start approaching that 5%, it doesn't take, how do I put it? If you have a bad year with our self-insured medical, that could put us below 5% and nothing flat.
Oh, it's much easier to go down than it is to get it back up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Other questions or discussion? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to consent grouping. Can I get a motion, please?
I move that the Grosse Ile Township Schools Board of Education approve the consent grouping items as presented.
Support.
This is for the payment of the bills for the period of May 1st, 2024 through May 31, 2024, in the amount of $1,910,934.94, and for the approval of the May regular meeting, June work session, and May closed session and June closed session meeting minutes.
Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Okay, we will move on to action items. The first thing that we have is a personnel update. Can I get a motion, please?
Move that the Grosse Ile Township Schools Board of Education approves a personnel update as presented.
Support.
This is the new hire of Vicki Holycross for our school psychologist position.
Okay, any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. And we actually are lucky enough to have Mrs. Holycross here with us tonight. Do you want to stand up quickly and just introduce yourself?
Come on up.
Okay, hi, everybody. This is Vicki. She comes to us with over 20 years of experience as a school psychologist. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome.
Glad to have you. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming.
thank you for being here. All right, we will move on to the Wayne Risa Regional Enhancement Millage Proposal. Can I get a motion, please?
I move that the Grosse Ile School District hereby requests that Wayne Risa submit to its electors the question of renewing, continuing the authority to levy a regional enhancement millage for 1.9812 mils for a period of 6 years, 28 to 33 inclusive, at the general election to be held on November 5th, 2024, pursuant to a ballot proposal substantially in the form presented to us. The school district I move that the school hereby approve the ballot wording of the regional enhancement millage renewal proposal substantially in the form presented to us, and such ballot wording is subject to revision and finalization by Wayne Risa as may be necessary. Our superintendent, I move that our superintendent is hereby authorized and directed to deliver a certified copy of this resolution to the secretary of the board, and all resolutions and parts of it, as they conflict with the provisions of the resolution being the same, being hereby are rescinded. That was a mouthful.
Support.
Support. Any discussion on this?
No, all I would add is that when we're talking about this millage and stuff like that, if you look at when we started pulling out of our deficit, and this was in large part of the Wayne enhancement millage. So
Yeah,
even though, how do I put it? It's unfortunate that for how much we put in from our property tax assessments, we don't get back, but it is still helpful to our children.
it is
Very helpful.
Helpful.
It's kept us afloat when we, yeah.
Sorry for the narrative.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. All right, we will move on to the 23-24 final amended budget. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Groseal Township Schools Board of Education adopt the final revised appropriations resolution for 2023-2024 as presented.
Any discussion on this? Heard a lot about it this evening. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. We'll move on to the 24-25 projected budget. Can I get a motion, please?
I move that the Grosse Ile Township Schools Board of Education adopts the appropriations resolution for the 24-25 general operating, food services, special revenue, and debt retirement funds as presented.
Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. We'll move on to summer taxes. Can I get a motion?
I move that the Roseville Township Schools Board of Education approve the tax rate for the 2024 summer tax collection as presented.
Support.
And that is going to be a total of $8,143,981.
Any discussion?
I think we talked about this earlier. Yeah.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. We'll move on to the 80/20 insurance. Can I get a motion, please?
That the Groseal Township Schools Board of Education elects to continue with the 80/20 healthcare contributions per PA 152 of 2011.
Support.
We took a look at both options here, and we think this is what seemed to be the best for our district and for our staff.
Yes. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any
Aye.
nays? Motion carries. Okay, we will move on to the Open SciEd curriculum adoption.
Move that the Grosse Ile Township Schools Board of Education approves the adoption as presented.
Support.
This is what we discussed during last work session as well as in the curriculum meeting.
Any further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Next, we have the DCTC Engineering Technology new course resolution.
I move that the Roseville Township Schools Board of Education approve the 2 new high school courses as presented. This is Engineering Technology number 1 and 2. These are nice additions to the curriculum.
Yes, and we talked about this during the work session.
Correct.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Next, we have the high school summer credit recovery.
I move that the Groseal Township Schools Board of Education approves the 2023-2024 summer school program as presented.
Support.
This is Interim Superintendent Audrey Kalis is recommending a credit recovery summer school program. The duration is July 8th through August 2nd. Weekly schedule is Monday through Thursday, 8 till noon. Location, middle school, cost $200 per course. Registration enrollment is at the Grosse Ile High School, and it will be until it's filled.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. We will move on to milk bids.
I move that the Roseville Township Schools Board of Education approve the bids for the purchase of milk through the Washtenaw ISD Purchasing CoPro Plus Buying Cooperative as presented.
Support.
This is for Bill Tunier, who always loved the milk bids every year. Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Next, we have gifts to the district.
I move that the Grosse Ile Township Schools Board of Education accept the gifts to the district as presented with thanks.
Support.
And this was from the Grosse Ile Roadrunners Club. It was a gift of 2 5-gallon water dispensers and some frame holders to be used to support the high school cross-country and track and field teams. And it's over a $450 value, so very appreciated.
Very appreciated. All gifts are always appreciated here.
Yes, and this is the second month in a row that they've donated.
Oh,
so
nice.
Special thanks to them. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. All right, and then the final action item that we have up for today is the superintendent appointment. Can I get a motion, please?
Move that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go, Scooter.
Move that the Grosse Ile Township Schools Board of Education approves the appointment of Audrey Kalis as superintendent as presented.
Support.
Any discussion on this?
Yes.
Very excited.
Congratulations.
Congratulations,
I
Audrey.
would say welcome, but you've been here a lot longer than one of us have.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. And I do want to read a statement on behalf of the board. So when the superintendent position opens in a school district, the board is responsible for filling that position by either appointing an internal candidate or opening up a search. The board is proud to recognize and promote exceptional talent within our district and has worked diligently to cultivate a robust team of leaders. Mrs. Kalis is the ideal candidate to guide us forward, to maintain momentum of our strategic plan, and ensure the continued excellence of Grosse Ile Township schools. She has played leadership roles throughout the district for the past 13 years, serving first as the principal of Park Lane Elementary, then going on to serve as the district's curriculum director, and finally serving as assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction and as interim superintendent. We know that she'll do wonderful things in this new role. Congratulations, Audrey. We're so excited for you to get started in July.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to serve in this role for this community, for this board, for the staff, and the students of Grosse Ile. For those of you who do know me or do not at home, I am a resident of Grosse Ile. I love this community. I love this school district. I will serve for all of your children and for mine as well who go to Grosse Ile schools. I couldn't be more happy and proud, and I am looking forward to many, many years ahead.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. And I will turn it over to you now for the superintendent.
All right, with that. So again, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. It's been so much fun to serve as interim for the past few months as well. But I do want to give a lot of congratulations and a final hoorah to our sports teams who have had a fantastic year. We are just wrapping things up finally. It seems crazy, like we've been out of school for a bit, and our students were still participating in sports and wrapping things up, but that's what happens when you have fantastic athletes. So I just want to run down a list of great accomplishments from our athletes this year and congratulate them for hard work and sportsmanship and for making our community proud. So bear with me as I have a little list to read to you today. We would like to honor our league champions in competitive cheer, boys hockey, boys golf, and girls tennis, district champions in competitive cheer, wrestling and girls soccer, regional champs in figure skating and girls soccer, and state finalists in girls soccer, which just recently wrapped up. They're amazing. All of our student athletes are fantastic. In addition, we've had 30 student athletes who were Huron League All-League First Team, 21 student athletes who were Huron League All-League Second Team, 13 athletes who were Huron League All-League Honorable Mention, and 46 Huron League Scholar athletes, which is incredible. In addition, we had 13 Huron League Scholar Athlete Honorable Mention, and we had Hannah Hargrove, who was the Huron League champion for girls golf. In addition, we had 35 all-district, all-region athletes, and the list just keeps going, and a regional championship by Caitlin Molnar in diving, and Nicholas Naso in boys golf, and 8 state boys golf qualifiers, which was absolutely incredible. And they made our community proud. And then finally, to wrap it up, we had a school record completed this year by Sam Vesperman in the pole vault at 15 feet 3 inches, and he was also the state pole vault champion. So congratulations to all of the athletes. And before we know it, they're going to be back on the field. They're back running around our community and ready to go for the fall. So we look forward to seeing them out and about again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,